we did a little study in our congregation of a survey of people who had been divorced just to find out what led to your divorce. There were 2,100 people who took the survey, divorced people related to Church of the Resurrection. And the responses, the top 5 were, and I'm starting at the bottom and working my way up, feeling unappreciated. The 4th was we drifted apart. The 3rd, we were too young when we got married. The 2nd was a failure to communicate. And the 1st, the most common reason for divorce, was infidelity. Now, there were lots of other reasons that were given. There were dozens, actually, and there were many of them that had hundreds of responses, but these were the top 5. And I want to mention one thing that I gain out of a list like that is I find myself as a married person saying, if those were the top reasons for divorce, what can I do to make sure that that doesn't happen in my own life? Now, I got married the week after high school graduation. I can't change the fact that I got married very young, but we've been married 35 years, and so far it's worked out okay for us. But I can look at this list and say, well, if people feeling unappreciated is one of the leading causes of divorce, then maybe I need to work harder at making sure my wife knows she's appreciated. And if one of the leading causes of divorce is people drifting apart, then maybe we need to be intentional about doing things that bring us together, planning date nights, finding common interests, doing things that my wife wants to do that I know will connect us together, and her looking at what she can do that will connect us together that I enjoy doing. So being intentional about that. And then as we think about communication, one of the things we learned several years ago at our church, we did a survey of everyone, and we found we looked for the correlations between those who were most happy in their marriages and the things that they did, their practices or disciplines. And we found that the people who were happiest in their marriages were also people who spent a minimum of 15 minutes, and most of them 30 minutes a day, in meaningful conversation with their mate. And so if lack of communication is a problem, then maybe a divorce-proofing technique is to devote at least 15 minutes, I'm suggesting at least 20 minutes, of daily meaningful conversation. That means you shut off the TV, you close your computer, you set your phone aside, and you have 20 minutes in which you're looking your spouse in the eyes and saying, tell me what's going on in your life. What are you feeling? How did you feel about it? What was going on today? What are you worried about? What's on your heart? And then listening well enough so that the next day you could ask your mate a question about that. That thing you were wrestling with yesterday, how are you feeling about it today? And that goes a long way in bringing people together. And then the last is infidelity. And if infidelity is the leading cause of divorce, then what do we have to do to guard our hearts to make sure that we don't succumb to infidelity? So every one of us as human beings wants to be liked. And at times at home, when maybe we're not feeling the love at home, and somebody flirts with you or is playful with you, you find yourself kind of excited about that. It feels good to have somebody, maybe they're attracted to you, and it feels good to have somebody attracted to you. And so the reality is having those feelings is normal. I mean, we're all going to feel that at some point in our lives. The question is, what do we do about it? And so when I've had those feelings at times in the past, I go, okay, that's a warning sign for me because I know that's a leading cause of divorce. I don't want that to happen in my life. I need to be careful about creating appropriate boundaries. And I think about Billy Graham, who, starting as a young man, when he traveled across the country, he set these boundaries that he would not eat with, sit down with, he would not have a conversation one-on-one alone with someone of the opposite sex. And it sounded kind of silly at first, but what he knew was that was a boundary he could put in place that would keep him from problematic relationships in the future. So he had plenty of friends who were women, plenty of conversations with people, but there was always somebody else around. And I found it interesting back when the Clintons were in the White House and Hillary Clinton wanted to have lunch with Billy Graham. And Billy Graham said, well, I'd be happy to have lunch with you. In fact, I'd love to do that, but there's going to have to be someone else there. And the press picked it up and thought it was pretty funny that Billy Graham would insist on having someone else there as though he and the First Lady would have a tryst. But the thing was, for Billy Graham, this was a rule I've lived by, and it's protected me all these years, and there are no exceptions. And so for me, I try to figure out how do I guard my heart to keep from putting myself in a situation where I might succumb to temptation. And I think that's a key rule.